African. Every black person is African, no matter where you are. So, sincerely, it is a shame that this block of corrupt African dictators will continue to bow to the demands of the corporatist West to push this agenda to suppress African development and advancement. I am outraged like every other African activist. There have been campaigns around the media for the reinstatement of Ambassador Arikana Chiomborikwa. For me personally, this is clear proof that she is in the midst of wolves and cannot fairly express her vision for Africa within that context. So I have a rather different proposal and an agenda that our Pan-Africanist activists would rather take. And I'll be putting a poll on Twitter and on Facebook later on for those of you African activists and Pan-Africanists to find out from you whether or not should Pan-Africanists and African activists not create a forum where we can have our own ambassadors like Professor Lumumba and Ambassador Arikana, that we can sponsor, or rather than have them at the behest of these corrupt African dictators who are puppets to the corporatist West. It is important that we understand the underlying problems so that we can effectively solve them. In my opinion, I would rather than calling for her reinstatement, I would be calling for an African activist agenda where we have 1 billion Africans today. If every African could just put $1, that is $1 billion, and we can back any ambassador that we want to do to carry our message to unite our people under a vision that can move Africa to the next level. I'm very confident of the support of Africans around the world who also support the move for a stronger and better Africa. And it is, of course, no doubt that an African Union, not a puppet to the West, would thrive, would build the kind of Africa that our next generation deserve, and not the Africa that is being designed from abroad. So my call is not for the reinstatement of Ambassador Chombori. My call is rather for African activists like myself and you watching this video and who is outraged by this move by the African Union to fire Ambassador Chombori, to rather back her up and other Pan-Africanists like her to carry our message forward. I'm not sure whether she has an organization that we can rather fund and support, but if we can come together as activists and champion a campaign to have our own, the real African Union. I'm talking about, forget about an African Union of corrupt presidents, dictators, an African Union of activists that can be as powerful as the lame dog African Union that is a puppet to Western corporations, and fund an African Union that is activist oriented, that cares about the people of Africa, that can bring change. The constant assembly of dictators called African Union as we have it today cannot move Africa any forward. For every agenda that brings development to the African people, the corporations will not allow that to thrive. And the corrupt African leaders can only help to make this worse. So it is my humble opinion that African activists build an African union, a union of African activists. I'm not sure exactly how such a structure would look like, but if we just put our heads together, we will come out with something that will make Africa proud. We can we can change Africa with strong beliefs, with a commitment, and not the African Union that is driven by politics, ego, and corruption. So I look forward to hearing what other activists, Pan-Africanists and activists out there feel about this. I think the sacking of Ambassador Chiombori should only be an eye-opener to let every Pan-Africanist out there know that the black continent, Africa, the richest continent in the world, will continue to be under attack if we don't do something. Because our hospitality have always been our greatest our hospitality have played against us every time. So it is very important for activists to take control of Africa. We cannot allow the vision of the next. We cannot allow the vision of the. We cannot allow the vision of the next generation to be in the hands of corrupt African dictators, and we cannot continue to tolerate the killing of our major voices. Every icon, everyone who stands out tall to defend and protect Africa gets some kind of smear, some kind of attacks to silence them, or most of the time kill them, like they have always done. We all have all the history of how all great African patriots were murdered so that the African continent can continue just to be so that the African continent continue to be slave to the West. So it is important for us to understand that we are still under attack and nothing has changed since the days of slavery. Our economy today is under slavery. Our leaders are slaves. Our economy is a slave economy still, and that has to change. It's not going to change by us just being outraged and not act. We can act now. We can take control of our continent, create an activist African Union, and not a puppet, lame duck African Union of corrupt dictators. I will just leave you this moment with excerpts of Ambassador Chiombori's campaign, so that you can feel for yourself why Ambassador Chiombori is being such a threat today to the West, that they would push a corrupt African Union and leaders like Musa Faki of the AU to fire a bright mind, a visionary like Ambassador Chiombore.